Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. We're gonna get started really quickly with some raffles. So feel free to continue eating. Just listen for your name. Can you hear me now? Oh yeah, I can hear myself. Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Feel free to continue eating. We are gonna, before we get started with our presentation, we're going to do some raffles. Hope everyone's excited. So what we have, these are all of our raffle prizes are from tribally owned enterprises. The first item that we have is a really fancy olive oil with some honey and almonds. And our second gift is an assortment of olive oils and balsamic vinegars. So, like I said, all from tribally owned enterprises. So the first name that I have here is Ricky Square. Ricky Square. Yeah. Ricky, come on up and claim your prize. Our next name is Ann Douglas. Ann Douglas, are you here? Okay, we'll give Ann another few minutes. The next are on our virtual online. So we have Yvette Diom. Okay, so we will set hers aside, and then Luann Jensen also on our virtual platform. And let's do an in-person. Let's see. Loida Atkins. Are you here? Yay! All right. Okay, so I will go ahead and get started. I hope that you all, well, first, I'm Keisha Harris. I'm one of the public health program managers here at USET. I really hope that you all are enjoying all of the sessions today. Next up on our agenda today, we have Shadana Sultan and Charles Typiconic will be presenting on census data. So a little about them. Shadana Sultan is Oglala Lakota, and she currently serves as a tribal relations specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau based in Denver, Colorado. Prior to joining tribal efforts for the 2020 census, she served as executive director of an American Indian nonprofit supporting American Indian commerce and economic development in Indian country. In that role, she helped fund hundreds of scholarships for American Indian scholars, and she created an initiative that took an AIAN delegation of Indigenous business leaders to Manchester, United Kingdom for global business initiatives. She has a background in TV advertising, marketing, promotion, working with Telemundo, NBC, ABC, and other media outlets. She's invested years of nonprofit service to immigrant and refugee populations. The Denver American Indian Commission nominated her, and Mayor Hancock awarded her the Denver Mayor's Diversity Award. RMICC awarded her the American Indian Achievement Legacy Award. She's won several national awards and one world title in Paris for speech and debate. She speaks Spanish and Lakota, and she's also studied several languages, including French, Arabic, Japanese, and more. She is a graduate of Western Kentucky University and holds a certificate of leadership from Harvard. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a historically Black sorority. And Next up, we have Charles. Charles Typiconic is an enrolled member of the Comanche Nation of Oklahoma and graduated from the University of Oklahoma in 1985 with a Bachelor of Science degree in petroleum engineering. He's obtained a mathematics teaching license from the state of Oklahoma upon completion of secondary education program at the University of Central Oklahoma in 1988. Typiconic has spent his professional career in the public sector focused on service to Native Americans by working directly for tribal governments or with federal agencies that serve tribal communities. Welcome, Shadana and Charles.
Ampetu washte ha metako yepi nape chiozapelo toka hia wen la kota imanchi yampi Shadana you washichu yepi imanchi yampi yushkia tachie. Greetings. I come to you in a good way. I would first like to say, do we have any Lakota relatives in our presence today? Hametakoyepi, which tribal nation? Okay, perfect. And for those that are viewing us online, if we have any Lakota relatives, hametakoyepi to you as well. I'd like to say thank you to our Hunkayapi for the opportunity to speak before you. As she mentioned, my Lakota name is, well, she gave you my name on my birth certificate, which is Shadana, but my Lakota name given to me in ceremony, at my naming ceremony, is She Who Leads, a proud member of the Oglala Lakota Nation. I'm currently serving as a tribal specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. I always tell people I am employed by the Census Bureau, but I work for my people. I've done that for many years, and I am honored to be of service to our people in Indian country. We're going to talk a little bit today about data. You'll have to forgive me. Right before I came up here, I spilled water on my pants. So I have to clarify that first, so I'm not hiding behind this podium the entire time. I have the absolute privilege of working with some super sharp, smart, powerhouse Native people at the census. And I'm just thrilled that all three of us could be here today. I'm going to quickly pass the mic to them so they can introduce themselves before we jump into our presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charles Typiconic. I am from Lawton, Oklahoma. I'm a member of the Comanche Nation, which is also headquartered in Lawton. And I just want to say thank you to USET for giving us this time and this opportunity to talk a little bit about the data that we have and we want to share with you, tribal organizations, tribal partners. And thank you. And we look forward to hopefully attending your meeting also in October.
Ani Buju, Bernadette Spota, Indigenous, Waganaxing, Odawa, and Dow, Alanson, Michigan, and Dojaba, Michigan, and Dodom. My name is Bernadette Spota, and I am a tribal citizen of the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians in Harbor Springs, Michigan. I actually reside in northern Michigan. I was recently hired by the Census Bureau as the 4th tribal specialist in the nation. Get to join these awesome individuals and providing that services to our communities and outreach to our communities in between those 10-year censuses. The census does a lot of surveys, and I think we need consistent communication and collaboration and outreach with both our federally recognized tribes, state recognized tribes, and urban Indian organizations in helping them utilize the vast amount of data that is available to them, and to help have that rapport with them so that they will complete those surveys for the census and maybe get educated and feel more comfortable working with each other as Native people. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, guys. So I set a timer on here because, as you know, as Native people, we love to talk. So I'm going to try to stay on time here. Our presentation, just so you know, this is interactive. It's interactive. So you're going to get quizzed on this later. Really, we're gonna quiz some of you guys on this. Actually, we're gonna ask for some of your input as we do some live demos here toward the end. So we're actually gonna ask you what kind of data you want to see. Bernadette was very kind after our session this morning for breakfast. She went and did some research about LGBTQ and some data that we can offer on that. So she's going to help us with that here in a little bit. But we will be calling on a few audience members for your input so that we can help locate some data for you to show you how easy it is to get to the data. Okay. If you have your cell phone out, you're going to get a copy of this, but you may want to take a picture of this just in case. This has our email addresses and our cell phone numbers. Those are cell phone numbers. So if you have very specific questions relative to data and how to get to some of these resources, you can reach us through this contact information. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in here. So we just at Census just created a new tribal relations program. Historically, for the decennial, we hire a bunch of people leading up to the 10-year decennial. So in 2020, 2030, there's a 10-year decennial. They onboard a lot of people. There are specific specialists for tribal that come on board. But for the first time in the history of Census, they now have ongoing permanent positions. This is part of a tribal relations program, and it's part of our AIAN programming there at Census. And this tribal relations program is really working on tribal data tabulation, so how we are collecting the data. We are listening, as you guys expressed earlier, our speakers this morning that were talking about how are you capturing that data. You may not have seen, some of us were sitting around here nodding our heads saying, exactly, that is so key. So some of the things that we're doing in this program is talking about how we are tabulating that data. We're making sure that we're continuing to engage with our partners. We're offering updates and resources for ongoing surveys. We talk about the upcoming 2030 survey. We're helping with geographic programs and resources out in Indian country. We're doing cultural awareness and engagement sessions within Census. So essentially, we are training our staff at Census that works in and around Indian country so that they are more aware of tribal cultures and cross-cultural communication. And then we help with the field and other directorates. Okay, you see that very colorful map over here to the side. Those are our assignments, okay? So you have 3 of the 4 specialists here on site with you today. Our program has 4 specialists with national coverage. The coverage states that I support are the states in yellow. Is there anyone here? I know there are a couple people from New York. I know yesterday, yep, is that Miss Cook? I saw Miss Cook. We were presenting at 11:15. I saw some people, Mr. Cofield, I think is from the Seneca or in New York as well. But anyway, the yellow zones are the coverage zone that I cover. I'm also super excited to be of support to the Taíno, the Confederación de la Gente Taíno in Puerto Rico. So that's really thrilling and exciting. Charles here, who's with us, is in the green. So all of those states, raise your hand if you are in one of these green states. Raise them high. So you should connect with this gentleman before you leave the conference. This is super important. Make sure he has your contact information and that you put a face with a name. Okay, Bernadette here covers the blue states. Is there anyone here from one of these blue zones? Perfect. I see a couple of hands here. Please make sure you see Bernadise. I did see some from the yellow zone here. Was there anybody else outside of this table that's in any of the yellow states? Perfect. Let's make sure we connect before you leave the conference this week. Okay, let's go ahead to, so basically what we're doing, we are resource support for you. Okay, so any of that stuff that you're seeing over here that you have questions about, we are your point of contact. Anything that has to do with census, Indian country, and any of those assigned zones, we can help you. One other thing that's not on there is recruiting. So we are also assisting people to onboard at census. We are always hiring across Indian country. Let's go ahead to our next slide. So I always tell people the beginning of this presentation is like cough syrup. It doesn't taste that great, but it is good for you. So make sure you pay close attention when we're going through this tabulation geography surveys before we get into the tools. Most people, when they come to these presentations, they immediately say, okay, yeah, but show me how, right? Show me how do I find such and such? How do I find Navajo Nation numbers? How do I find urban numbers, the different neighborhoods in Nashville where American Indians are living? They want to know that. And we're going to get to some of that through our tools. But before we jump into that, I got to give you the cough medicine first. Okay, you got to take that cough medicine, because once you learn a little bit about how we tabulate, how we collect the data, our geography, and then our other surveys, it may answer some questions that are probably going to pop up when you start looking at the data. And then we'll end with Q&A. So let's go to our next slide. Why census data? Why is census data important? Is there anyone in here who sat on a complete count committee? Anybody worked on a complete count committee for census? Has anyone ever worked for census? Were you an enumerator? Oh, perfect. Well, welcome, welcome. Long lost family member, welcome. Okay, we think that the NCAI, National Congress of American Indians, says it best. To sum this up for you, basically, census data affects every single federal dollar and resource making their way into Indian country. Every single one. There is a misnomer, and I used to believe this before I came to work at Census. I used to think, well, I'm enrolled. I'm Oklala Lakota. My daughter's enrolled. I know the last name Sultan fools some people, but I am a Natashija Lakota. That is a crazy Lakota woman, for those of you guys who don't speak Lakota. I used to think, because I'm enrolled, somebody somewhere just knows that these two Lakota people live here, and they're going to get money to this Denver Indian Health Services or to the Denver Indian Center. And they're just going to know because I'm enrolled. And that is not necessarily how federal budgets and resources work. Basically, the planning of this is centered around census data. And who is responsible for making sure they show up in the census data? At the end of the day, who's responsible for that? We all are responsible for making sure we all show up in that data. It's almost like voting, right? That is a responsibility that you should do to make sure you are showing up in this data. Therefore, because this is affecting all of these federal dollars, and when I say every federal dollar, I mean housing budgets, grant money, transportation budgets, public safety, right? Emergency management, all of those testing kits that are going out to Indian country, vaccinations, all of that is based on census data. And we all fill that census data out, and we all decide which box to check, right? Of how we identify ourselves. So census data is important in that way, that this is affecting all of the federal funding and resources that are making their way into your community. Let's go to our next slide. Data tabulation. It is important to remember at the core of what census does, we are essentially putting data on a map, okay? At the core of what we do is taking all of those numbers and sticking it on a map. So for us, we are really looking at where people live. We do not touch enrollment. How many federally recognized tribes are there in the United States? Take a guess. Someone got close, 574. There are currently, somebody give that guy a sticker, whoever yelled that out. There are 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States. There are over 60 plus, right, state recognized tribes. All of them have their own method for enrollment and disenrollment. We do not touch that at census. It is self-identification. When you first pull the data and you start looking at tribal lands, it's going to give you information about everybody that lives on those tribal lands, not just the American Indians. But we can show you how to put the filters on there so you can drill down to that number. Because this is self-identification, we encourage everyone, if you're checking that box of American Indian, you should list all of your tribal affiliations, not just where you are enrolled. So for example, I have a colleague that is Navajo, Paiute, and Yuchi. When she fills out the census, we encourage her to put all 3 tribal affiliations, because sometimes, even though she's enrolled Navajo, sometimes she's in that Paiute community and she's utilizing those services. Sometimes she's in the Yuchi community and she's utilizing those services. Then we had a question of saying, well, isn't that giving duplicate numbers? And I said, no, it's not. Theoretically, if we were to look at the data for her household, we cannot drill down to that singular level, right? So nobody can actually look at the data just for one single household. That's a violation, right? They should not know how much money you are making in your household and all of the data associated with that one house. But if we could, and we looked at her information, it's not going to tell us there are 3 natives living there. It's going to tell us there's 1 person living there, and they identify as Navajo, Paiute, and Yuchi. So hopefully that can dispel some of that for you. The AIAN category. For people who check the box American Indian, Alaskan Native, if they do not put a tribal affiliation, they go into a general category of American Indian, Alaskan Native. If they put an abbreviation that we cannot identify, it will go into that category. So for example, in Colorado, there's a tribal nation, the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. On all of their local paperwork, they put the acronym SUIT. That means something in that Colorado community, but when they're processing all of this census paperwork in Indiana, that may not have a relevance, right? So we always encourage people when they are filling out paperwork, census surveys, and they're listing tribal affiliations, in addition to listing all of their tribal affiliations, we encourage them to write out the full name. Try to avoid those abbreviations. Otherwise, you may end up in that general AIAN category. Let's go ahead to our next slide. If you look at this map over here to the right, this is about geography. So when you are talking about census, geography, and Indian country, you may come across an acronym that says AIR. When you're pulling this data, if you see that somewhere, that stands for the American Indian Reservations. This is a snapshot of the Denver-Dallas region. There are 12 states in there. Those teal kind of green areas, Those are all the tribal lands, the federally recognized American Indian reservations in the Denver-Dallas region. You can see there in South Dakota, in the very southern part, and the west, the far west, that's Pine Ridge. That's where my family's from. Which is over 2 million acres there. You're gonna see some little gold sparkle, little yellow sprinkles there around some of those tribal lands. That's trust land, trust land. If you look at the state of Oklahoma, we had someone speak yesterday about Oklahoma, and they mentioned there are 39 federally recognized tribes in the state of Oklahoma. Of those 39, only one has an American Indian reservation. Does anyone care to take a guess at which tribal nation that is? Osage, Osage. 39 tribal nations in Oklahoma, only Osage has a reservation. The other 38 have statistical areas. So these are lines that those tribal nations drew in conjunction with the census and the BIA to show their service area, where their tribal lands used to be. That's important to know. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Some of the larger tribal lands can have smaller things broken down into them. So we talked about Pine Ridge, over 2 million acres. Historically, when you pull data for Pine Ridge, it would be for all 2 million acres. When you have these really large tribal lands like Navajo Nation, they need data on a smaller level. So they'll break that down. Sometimes they're called subdivisions. Sometimes they're called chapters. Do we have any Navajo Nation members here in the room? Anybody? Navajo? Nope. Not one Navajo person is here in the room today. That is really shocking. I don't think I have ever been. Okay, they were here earlier. Okay, that is really shocking. I don't think I've ever been to a tribal event where there's never been Navajo people in the room. Okay, so for Navajo Nation, they're called chapters. Some of them call them districts. So just know they can be called different things by tribal nations. But if they're looking for a smaller area on their tribal lands to get data, you'll want to come to census and ask for the subdivision data. CDPs are even smaller level. It's basically where we assist tribal nations to draw lines on the map to get data in a very specific area. We'll talk about that on the next slide. And TDSAs are for tribal nations who do not have any trust lands or reservations, but they still need data, right? So you have some tribal nations that do not have reservations or trust land, but they still have service areas. So you can get with one of your representatives. We'll connect you with the geography team, and they can help identify some statistical areas. Let's go ahead to our next slide. So this is Pine Ridge Reservation. You can see all these different colors are basically the subdivisions. Usually those lines are drawn along the lines of voting districts. So you see that dark purple there, look in the very center, that's Porcupine. Just to the right of that is the Medicine Root District. In Medicine Root, there's a community there that's called Kyle. They have a school there. There's some nonprofits, a credit union that's in there. So there's a CDP line drawn there to get some information. Now, why would you want to draw a CDP line around Kyle? Anyone have an idea of why they might, as a tribal nation, want to do that? If they're going after grant money, grant funds for that community specifically, and they need data just for that community, they have that CDP line drawn, so it's easy to access. So they can quickly pull the data for that community to apply for grant funding. That's one reason why. Community planning is another one. Okay, guys, if you have a fork in your hand, hold it very still, very still. If you have a knife in your hand, hold it very still. I'm only going to say just this one. I just need 30 seconds of your time. If you forget anything else we say today, anything else, you must remember what I'm about to tell you. This is the most important thing that we're going to share with you. And it's Bass and LUCA. BAS and LUCA. The BAS stands for Boundary Annexation Survey. LUCA stands for Local Update of Census Address. BAS happens every single year. Basically, census sends this information to the tribal nation and says, these are the boundaries of your tribal land. Are they correct? This is the opportunity for tribal nations to send it back and say, hey, there's 30 miles out here, or we have new trust land that's not showing up on there. They send that back to us. Once that record is updated, if there are big changes, we have to go to the BIA. But once it's updated, all federal agencies recognize that. That's important to know. And then just ahead of the decennial, we have this LUCA where we'll send that out. It's usually about 3 or 4 years ahead of decennial. And we'll say, based on your last boundaries, this is the mapping of all the houses within those boundaries. Is this correct? This is the opportunity for you tribal nations to say, you're missing some houses. I cannot stress how important this is. It is super important for Indian country to participate in this, because if you are not getting this on record, you are losing your counts. And if you're losing your counts, you're not getting accurate counts, you're not getting access to the right amount of funding and resources for your community. Okay, that's all I had to say this. You can get back to eating, move your forks and knives. We had an inquiry here. Yay, Caroline. Yate, Caroline. I see you, Caroline. Thank you for watching. Thank you. I was really shocked there weren't Navajos here. Okay, thank you, Caroline. Okay, so we also have S3 GIS. So sometimes tribal nations are working on projects. They need geography support. By the way, I should tell you, all of these services are free. They don't cost money to get our support on stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying we're going to go out and do special surveys for you. Please do not say that. Shadana did not say that. Put that on record. But I am saying these services of support from geography and some of our surveys, this does not cost money to get a data presentation. That's free to you. Not just tribal nations, every partner in this room. You can inquiry about that and we can support you on that. Okay, BIA offers training that's available for geography resources. And then we're working with tribal nations about ambassadors. So if there are tribal nations that are here and you want to designate someone in your community to be a geography ambassador, because perhaps the tribal nation doesn't have the funding to have a full-time person working in GIS and geography, but maybe you have someone that's in the 911 division or emergency management that needs mapping and satellite imaging for their 911 systems, and that person can attend some trainings. That can be your geography ambassador, and it's free for them to get those trainings and to get access to that, because they're going to want to know where all the houses are and what their official addresses are. I think we had a question here. So it's sent to the tribal leader's office every January. It at least goes there. Sometimes tribal nations will provide additional points of contact and they'll say, send it to this person in this department, and they'll get another copy of that. So one of the things that we do as specialists, we are now keeping a database of that. We reach out on a regular basis to our tribal leaders to say, who's the point of contact? Do you still want us to send that to you? Or do we need to add your realty department on there as an alternate point of contact? So that does go out at least to the tribal leader's office. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I have been floored at how many tribal nations do not participate in this program. It was very shocking for me to see that. And sometimes I'll hear from Indian country and they'll say, you didn't count all of our houses. And the first thing I say is, well, let's go look at your LUCA, right? Your local update of census addresses. Who was the last person that did that? When did you actually participate in that? And now we need to sort that out to make sure you're doing that on an ongoing basis to keep that updated. Let's go ahead to our next slide. Ongoing surveys. Did you guys know Census does over 130 plus surveys every year? Most people only hear about census for the decennial that happens every 10 years. We do over 130 surveys each year. The decennial is the biggest one. So the decennial happens every 10 years, 2000, 2010, 2020, 2030. This is the one survey where we go visit every single household and knock on doors, right? We send out the surveys and say, please send this back. We are trying to get a count from every household in the United States. The other surveys, we go and do samples in that community, right? So the ACS survey, they'll visit a few houses in that community. They'll take the responses of those surveys and make an estimate about the entire community based on those responses. Can you see why it's important to fill that out? If they're only doing a few homes in that community and people aren't doing it, then that estimate, it's really, really important that you get a good swath of that community. So if they're knocking on your doors to fit for any of these surveys, please participate in those. Cannot stress that enough. This is a shameless plug. We are out doing these 130 plus surveys. We need people to conduct them. And it's really important that the people who collect that data are from within that community. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first came to work at Census, I came to my job interview, and the gentleman who eventually became my boss, he's from a pueblo in New Mexico. He was a tribal leader there. And I went to him and I said, Amadeo, in my household, the way I was raised, I don't typically answer the door for strangers, right? And especially now that I have that ring thing, good luck, right? You could hear me inside watching TV and I still probably won't open the door. So I don't really answer the door to strangers, but let's just say I happen to open the door to a stranger and then they start asking me questions like, who lives here? How old are they? What are their birth dates? What race are they? The way I was raised, boom, that door's getting shut. And I asked Amadeo, how are you going to handle that? And he looked at me and he said, exactly. That's why we need you working here. And I thought about that. I got tickled for a little bit and I thought, what a clever little thing to say. But it's the truth. We need local people to collect that data, right? Because people are more inclined to open the door when it's Miss Bessie's niece, right? Or when it's Uncle Carl who's knocking on that door, or they say, oh, that's Mr. Hart's family. Let me open the door and talk to them, right? So when Miss Marie from across town is saying, hey, we're collecting this data, it's helping us with our funding and resources, people are more inclined to respond. So I say all that to say, we are hiring. We are hiring. Please apply for those jobs. They're part-time, flexible hours. A lot of people do them in the evenings, on the weekends. Some people have other jobs that they do full-time and they do this in their free time. So we encourage you to apply for those. Let's go ahead to the next slide. And we're going to start flying through these so we can get to our tools. The ACS, outside of the decennial, this is the second largest survey that we do. We visit over 3.5 million addresses. It covers 40 topics. If you look down here at the bottom, that last bullet point with those 3 subs there. So basically, this data is released in 3 separate releases. For communities that have over 65,000 people, so like Nashville, when you're looking for data for Nashville, it's going to come out in a 1-year release. For smaller communities that have less than 65,000, but more than 20,000, they're going to come out in a 1-year supplemental. And for our really small rural communities that are less than 20,000, their data is going to come out in a 5-year estimate. I know that sounds a little jumbled up there and it's a lot of detailed information, but I mentioned that when we start pulling this data and you start seeing that 1-year, 5-year, 1-year supplemental, that's going to tell you those numbers are going to fit in one of those categories. Okay, so let's go to our next slide. I mentioned to you when we do everything except the decennial, all of our other surveys are on samples of that community, okay? So if we were to do a survey, a decennial survey of this room, we would collect data from every single one of you in here, right? But if we're doing the other 130 plus surveys at Census, we're going to get a sample out of here. So I might take someone from these two tables and 2 people from back there and 3 people from over here, right? When you do samples and then you make an estimate about the entire room, you're going to have a margin of error. It is important to remember, the bigger the sample size, the smaller the margin of error. The smaller your sample size, the bigger margin of error you're going to have. That's really important in Indian country because a lot of Indian country is in rural parts of America, right? Those tribal lands are in rural parts of America. Those sample sizes are smaller. So the margin of errors are a bit bigger. You must remember though, that Census will only release data when we have at least a 90% level of confidence. It's a precision of a given level of confidence at any point at that point in time when that's collected. So when you see those numbers plus or minus, when we pull this data, we're going to start jumping into the data now. When you see plus or minus in that margin of error column, that's not a percentage, okay? I was on a call one day and a gentleman was walking through there and said, I can't use this. It's plus or minus 83% margin of error, 72% margin of error. And I said, no, that's 83 people, plus or minus 72 people. So it's a hard count number, not a percentage. So remember that when we pull the data. Okay, let's go to our next slide. Now we're getting into the interactive. Okay, how was that cough medicine? Anybody get sick? You guys are okay? All right. If you're feeling nauseous, drink some water. We're getting into the tools here. This is the interactive portion, guys. So we're going to start asking you for specific examples. Let's go ahead to our first tool. And I am going to turn this over to Charles, who's going to talk to you about my tribal area.
So all of our data is available from our website. It's just census.gov. We can go to that and I'll show you. And we have a search tab right at the top of that website. And if you just type in my tribal area, this will pull up. This is our ACS data, American Community Survey, and it's specifically for tribal areas or reservations and trust lands. And so if you go to the tribal area, you type in my tribal area, you'll pull it up and the page will show, hopefully. And you can just type in the name of the tribe that you're looking for, you want data about, or you can go to a state. If you go to a state, for example, if you type in Mississippi, the drop down below it will give you every federally recognized tribe that's in Mississippi. And so you could see specific data about Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians from the American Community Survey. If you look at the top left-hand tab, it says people, jobs, housing, economy, and education. This is the type of data that's available from the American Community Survey for the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians in this specific geographical area. What specific area are we speaking of? Well, there's a map there. In blue are the areas that this data is representing from. So for that, if you just look at some of the demographic information for people, if we scroll down, you can see that we have different areas of data available. Place of birth, ancestry, veteran status, disabilities, residents. But there's a significant amount of data that's available for every tribe that is federally recognized in every state. So it's a quick tool to use to get started with tribal data. If you look at the next tab, it's jobs, we'll talk about some of the data that we have about specific occupations for people that live in this geographic area that have answered the American Community Survey. As I'd like to reemphasize what Shadana was saying, it's so important. The main part of our job is to work with our tribal partners, tribal organizations, tribal governments, to build that trust, to provide the information so that they can share with their tribal members, their tribal citizens, why it's so important, not only to fill out the surveys, but to fill them out accurately. And what I mean by accurately, for example, the decennial census, where we ask for, if you check the box that I am self-identifying as an American Indian or Alaska Native, the very next question says, what tribe do you affiliate with? And as Shadana mentioned, you can list numerous tribes. You don't have to just mention or list the one tribe that you're enrolled with. But when we are filling that, you have to handwrite this in. A lot of people in the past, one of the challenges that we face, and it's just part of our education process. For example, in Oklahoma, we have the Seminole Nation. It's a tribe headquartered in Seminole, Oklahoma. A lot of people will just put down Seminole when they put down for their tribal affiliation. Well, we at Census don't know, are you talking specifically about Seminole Nation, Oklahoma, or are you the Seminole tribe in Florida? So one of our jobs is to raise this awareness with our tribal partners is, yes, we please fill out the survey, but also fill it out as accurately as possible. And that means including the total federally recognized name or state recognized name of the tribe that you're affiliated with. So we can make sure that the resources and the federal dollars that should be going to your tribes or the tribes that you have listed go there. So my tribal area, I would encourage you, if you're just want a brief introduction to some of the types of data that is available, please use this. Now these are just numbers and tables of numbers. If you want to put these, if you're writing a grant and you want to start putting these numbers into words and paragraphs, we have a tool called a narrative profile, which will turn all this information from the American Community Survey into words and paragraphs for you. Yes, sir. I can't hear you.
Yeah, we just looked up on your website, the Virginia federally recognized tribes are not listed at all.
Yep, this is still being updated. So some of the tribes in Virginia, I don't know if it's a legal issue. How long have you been federally recognized?
4.5 years.
Yeah, see, this data is from 2015 to 2020 currently that we're showing. So if you were, we haven't compiled or processed that data or provided it, published it yet for those tribes in Virginia.
Okay.
But that will be coming.
Do you have a time frame?
Actually, this is just an introductory tool that I'm showing you now. When we get into the specific census.data.gov, you can actually look up that data that we have right now.
Oh,
and I'll show you that.
Thank
This
you.
is just an introductory type of tool.
I'll
Thanks
jump
very
in there
much.
really quickly. I think Jessica covers Virginia. She would be there. It's Jessica. Okay, so her name is Jessica. She is the tribal specialist assigned for Virginia. And we'll make sure, if you could just see one of us before you leave, we'll make sure to give you her direct contact information so you can follow up directly with her. But there are more tools we're going to go through here in just a second that you're going to see that information too.
And if you would like to provide me with contact information, I can get the info to Jessica, because I actually also work with West Virginia area, so they're kind of
Similar. So in that tribal area, that data from the American Community Survey, if you go to our search engine once again and type in narrative profiles, in words and paragraphs, we'll help you write a grant using the data from the American Community Survey. I don't know if we have time to show them just a brief. If we go to narrative profiles. You can just hit the tab. It says get a narrative profile there in blue. You'll have to tell what type of geography you want to look at. There is a American Indian Alaska Native option, so we'll hit that. And then it's going to ask what tribe do you want to look at, what data from which specific federally recognized tribe. And so if we choose any, just choose one, for example.
From one of our tables. So this is where we're getting, whoever, Adrian Compton, are you here? There you go. Oh, okay. Well, okay. Let's look for and see if we can find that on here with Monacan Indian Nation. So we're going to use that as the example.
So this is alphabetically listed, so we'll go down to our M's. And that's probably the same issue that we're speaking about earlier. Is we haven't processed that data yet for that tribe. I've just choose the.
Which one?
So once again, this is just from our website, census.gov. And then you just type in where it says search, narrative profiles, and then you go through the filters and find the tribe that you're looking for. And it'll start putting into words and paragraphs that you can print, you can download to an Excel or a Word file and use this directly. This is public information, so it's available for public use. But for example, education, it says in 2016 through 2020, 77.6% of people 25 years and over had at least graduated from high school from this tribal nation. That's just some of the type of data that's been put into words for you that you might want to use in a grant application. Yes, ma'am. And this is all included in the PowerPoint that's available to all of you, and even those that are listening virtually. You don't need to be writing down any notes. The step-by-step how to do this is included in this PowerPoint.
So my name's Christy Duke, and I'm an epidemiologist with USET. And one of the issues that we've had with census data is suppression of numbers because of small numbers. So is it possible for tribal nations to get files that are not public on their results?
I don't know. Do you know that, Shadena?
Okay. Can you repeat the question? I don't think I understood it.
Can tribal nations get access to restricted files, files that are not public use? Because many of our tribal nations, the data is suppressed because of small numbers.
Okay, give me an example of one tribal nation where that's happening.
Try Gina Banda Choctaw.
Which one?
Gina Banda Choctaw.
Choctaw.
Janaban.
Gina Band,
Band.
and they have tribal lands?
Yes.
Okay, let's go on the tribal lands. And some of the tools that we're going to review in a second might actually be a solution for that. One of the tools that we're going to look at is data.census.gov. And that may give you some. So you said Gina with a G? J, sorry.
J-E-N-A.
This one, J-E-N-A,
Yep.
the Gina Band of Choctaw in Louisiana, which I'm the support for that. So I'd be happy to follow up with you. So you do have some data here for the Gina Band of Choctaw Reservation in Louisiana. It's going to give you an overview of the households. And so I think one of the things that she may be referring to is, so basically what is happening with the advancement of technology. So a lot of technology advances. Remember earlier when I said no one should look up the data for your house and see how much money you make, right? That is an invasion of your privacy. This is avoidance disclosure. So to avoid that kind of stuff where they can't know personal information about you, they have blurred some of that information, right? And especially when we get into some of our rural communities and smaller communities, that becomes a concern, right? And I'm assuming that's kind of what she's alluding to with some of these smaller communities that happens. And so there are ways that we can get you in touch with our data dissemination specialist. That's all they do is data presentations. And so essentially what I would do is connect you with a DDS, a data dissemination specialist. You literally can say, I would like a presentation about economic development over the Genabana Choctaw for Louisiana, or I want a full day housing information session just about this particular community. It doesn't have to be tribal nations. It could be in urban areas about American Indians in Dallas. And they can do that. So yes, there are some, and it's just learning how to maneuver some of the tools. So we're careful when it says publicly private data and publicly available, because there are a bunch of tools that you can access with microdata. It's still public, but you have to know how to access it. So
one of our jobs is just to introduce some of the tools in the data that is available. And then we can connect you with the specialists with the Census Bureau that will go in depth with you and get you what is available for your tribal nation. So that's our job. So please contact us from our information if there is specific data that you want to look at. And what they'll use is what Shadana is going to show next, is our main page for data is called data.census.gov on the web. And from that site, you have to know specifically how to maneuver through and use all the filters that are available. And that's what our specialists will help you do. Because if you're not well-trained in using this website, especially data.census.gov, the first time through is kind of hard. And so our specialists will ask you what type of information, what type of data do you want to use in your grant application. Then they'll show you how to use data.census.gov. And they'll do this by telephone or by Zoom, or we can set up in-person meetings too, if you'd like. But it's free, and it's just a resource that we provide.
Perfect. And as we are getting down to our last couple of minutes here, I wanted to make sure you're aware of these other ones. Since we have a lot of health related conversations here. This COVID hub might be pertinent to you. Basically, it's a great way to do community planning for any kind of COVID education outreach. Great for any of your health directors, your clinics that are doing any COVID specific. There's a Census Business Builder tool that's also available to you. I've seen a lot of tribal nations that have used this to try to figure out what businesses are on their tribal lands. If you have an entrepreneur program where you're trying to start new businesses and you want to get a view of the landscape, this is going to help you to start writing those business plans. It's almost written for you when you narrow that down. So your data dissemination specialist can walk you through that. I've actually shown this to Indian Health Services. Their urban groups have looked at this to try to look at urban areas across the United States to find out pockets of communities that have a high percentage of American Indians that don't have access to health care. So they know where to place urban clinics. They've used that business builder. It'll map all of that out for you. Quick Facts is a great way to get some really cool information just very quickly. It's only for populations over 5,000. Statistics in schools, if you do after school programs, education outreach, there's a lot of resources in there for educators. So there's games that you can use to help educate students about the importance of census. Let's get into data.census.gov. Okay, this is where we're going to use a live demo example really quickly. So we talked about same-sex data earlier. Are those speakers still in the room? I don't think I see them anywhere. Marlon, Maddie, nope, not in the room. Okay, do you want to walk through this really quickly, Bernadise? Or do you want me to just...
Yeah, we may be running out of time.
Oh, we've got 15 minutes. Perfect. Okay. So let's just show you ideally what's going to happen on data.census.gov is you would for any of your data needs, come here. So just remember that, bookmark that on your computer, data.census.gov. We're going to use that same sex question that we had earlier. What do you want to share what you found out about that first or not, Bernice? Yeah.
Basically, you can search LGBTQ on data.census.gov. You can actually go to the census.gov website also, and they highlight stories. So if you were looking for data and specific highlighted stories in regards to the data they're collecting on LGBTQ communities, you can go search that on the census.gov library. They have highlighted stories. The census did start collecting data on these communities on the Pulse survey, but also on the American Community Survey. They do now ask a gender identity question and a sexual orientation question so that they can start providing that valuable data in regards to those communities for policy issues and things like that.
Thank you, Bernice. And so if you saw there while she was talking, all I did in that search box was just put in parentheses, same sex. If you just put that without the parentheses, it's going to bring up a lot of tables that is basically male, female, and it has nothing to do with LGBTQ or same sex. So to narrow that down, I put it in parentheses, same sex, and it's brought up some tables for us. So now we've got quite a few tables in here that are going to bring us some information. So if I click on this first table, you can see there is a data set table that tells us how many same-sex households there are across the country. But if you want this specific to your community, you can go over here to geography. We're going to add that filter in there. So let's just say, let's take this table over here to the front. These, you three, which community do you live in? Zuni, New Mexico. So we're going to scroll down. So let's just say we wanted to look at Zuni tribal lands. You can scroll down here to where it says American Indian Area, Alaska Native Homelands. Actually, let's try to click on one of these. So this is actually looking at tribal areas, actual tribal lands. So when you click on that, so now basically I tell people this website is almost like a bag of data. When you shake it, things are going to fall out at the bottom. If you put too many filters on it, nothing's going to fall out. So save yourself some frustration and start with the biggest filter you can. Shake that bag of data and pick through what falls out. If you put too many filters on there, you're going to keep yielding no results and you'll get frustrated. So we're going to start with some big ones there. She said there from Zuni. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was thinking Hopi. I'm so sorry. That was really silly. Let's go back to the state, New Mexico. So we're going to click geography and we'll go into the state area. And you can go even down to neighborhood levels in urban areas. So we're just going to look for the state. Actually, go down here too. And what is the county? Is that the county is Zuni? McKinley. Okay, perfect. Let's go to the county. So you can start narrowing this down. When you click the county, it's going to ask us which state do you want a county. It's going to give us a list of counties. We can choose that list of counties, and then it's going to start giving us the data specific to those counties. And of course, it's very slow today. Maybe it's because we've got some other. There we go. So let's go down to New Mexico. And then we're going to go, and it's going to ask us which counties. And you know what we can do is look at all counties in New Mexico. And I'm just going to close out some of these tabs so this doesn't slow us down. And this is why we sometimes try to load these ahead of time, because it is a little slow. And as there we go. So we've got all of our counties across New Mexico. We're going to click this for all counties of New Mexico. And now it's giving us some results. You see here, there's 1,146 data tables available to us. Let's collapse this down so we can actually look at those. And the first one is unmarried partners. It's giving us a breakdown, female household, female partner. And this is by county. So you can see that Bernalillo County, New Mexico. If you start scrolling over, you'll get all of the counties of New Mexico. So we can actually get all the way over. There's Valencia County, Santa Fe, San Juan County. So this is the data breakdown of unmarried partnered households. If we wanted to remove that margin of error, we'll just click that to get that out of there. And so as you can see, you can start really drilling down. So even on some of these very specific topics where we're looking at same-sex marriages or same-sex households, what does that data look like on a county level? You can actually map this out as well. Oh, there's our timer. You can map that out. So you saw me just hit that map there. Now you have a heat sensory map of all of the counties of New Mexico, and then you're mapping that data of those households there. If you want a specific variable, so you can go up here, click this, and if you want to say, I'm specifically looking for households where there are unmarried partnered households, female household with a female partner, you can click that and it's mapping that data for you. So you can see that heat sensory map, you can click on it and it'll actually give you a number. So in Bernalillo County, there are 1,082 households where there is a female household with a female partner. So as you can see, again, there's very specific data that's available to you. You can also type in any of your search topic filters. So if you wanted to say, I want to know about veterans, you can just start typing the keyword and then you'll check the box. I want to know about veterans, and it'll start bringing up data tables specifically about veterans. So it can drill down to any of these kind of table topics. Is there anybody in the audience in the last few minutes that we have before we close out that want to look at at their own data? Anybody in the audience that's interested to show their specific data? Okay, if not, the last thing, I think we have like 2-3 minutes left. Are we good for like 2 or 3 minutes? The last thing we'll show you is how to do this in an urban area. So let's find where American Indians are in Nashville. So you're gonna go here to advanced search. You're gonna go to geography. We're gonna go down to county level. And what is the county here? Davidson County, perfect. So we're gonna look at, okay, that's okay. So we're gonna go into Tennessee, and then we're gonna go down to Davidson County. There it is. So Davidson County. And then, so this essentially is giving me information about everyone in Davidson County. I'm specifically looking for American Indian, Alaskan Native data. So I'm gonna go to race and ethnicity. And I double clicked it, there it is. And then we're gonna go down to, it sounds like we got an online question.
So we have a question from online. It says, what happens when the tribal lands overlap 2 state boundaries?
So our data, we have another tool called Tiger Web that can actually map out some of that stuff for you. But when you're going on to this data thing, it will include everything within those boundaries. So if you cross 3 states like Navajo Nations, that's in Colorado, Utah, and Arizona, New Mexico, sorry, and Utah. When it crosses 3 states, it's all of their tribal lands across those 3 states. You can also narrow that data down to say, I only want to look at Navajo Nation tribal lands in Utah, and it will only bring the data up for that specific set. So it does have the capacity to do that for you guys. So let's see here. And I'm so sorry, I'm trying to hold this. Can I put that there? Yep. Let's just go here. So sorry. So here we go, advanced search. And then we're gonna go down here to topics. And then we're going down to race and ethnicity. And then we're gonna click American Indian, Alaskan Native. Let's choose this big filter here, AIAN, and then we'll go back to our general category here for geography. And we're going to narrow this down to the state of Tennessee and go to Davidson County. So there we go, Tennessee. And then it's going to ask us for the counties of Tennessee. We'll click Davidson. There it is. Okay. Davidson County. And then we're going to hit search. So this is information about American Indians in Davidson County. If you wanted to look at a map, we'll go to click here on a map. And it's providing us some maps. We're going to scroll down here to AIAN alone or in combination with other races. And then I'm going to go here to the layer and I'm going to try to get that on a tract, census tract. So these are neighborhoods. These are neighborhoods across Nashville. And it's basically when that starts populating, it's going to show you the pockets of neighborhoods that have the most populations of American Indians by census tract. So if you're doing a community outreach, and we're so sorry, typically we would call on someone from the audience and say, tell us the project that you're working on, and we would walk you through my tribal area and that narrative profile to show you how to start writing your grant. But if you were working on a center here in Nashville and you wanted to put flyers out for Indian country, once that loads, it would tell you which neighborhoods you need to go hang those flyers up. So that's the very practical use of this. If you're working on a health related program, it would tell you these are the neighborhoods you need to go look at. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there since we're out of time. So sorry, go ahead. Yes, if you can just for online. So the online question was the additional contact information for Jessica. You can email either of us three and we'll we'll actually copy her in the email and let her know that you're inquiring things about from this particular conference. Any final questions before we close this out here today?
And I just want to add, anyone that is an urban Indian organization or tribe from one of those blue states there, if you would like this exact presentation, Census 101, you can go ahead and reach out to me by email and we can set something up and get something going on the calendar.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for a great presentation. On behalf of present you all with a token of appreciation for your presentation today. I think we've got enough. We got one. Charles, Bernice, we have one for you as well. Thank you all. So, everyone excited for some more raffles? Okay. Is everyone excited for some more raffles? So I would like to, we want to shout out to the people that are participating online. Thank you all for participating and being active today. We're going to go through a couple of more raffles. We have 2 online winners coming up and then a few more in person. Let's do in person first. Okay. So Sarah Goodwin. Do we have Sarah? Sarah's here. And then let's see. The last one, Haley Rowland. And then we have 2 more to give out for our online attendees. First up, we have Shari Mercusio. And then we also have Beverly Felton. So Shari and Beverly, if you all are online, thank you for attending. And also please contact Tevia or in the chat and let us know so we can get your gifts to you. And
Hi, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Angela Snell, one of the communication team members. Our other communication team is Vicky French. Vicky, raise your hand. And we worked really, really hard on an app that we would love for you to download and use because it's so pretty. So you can download it from the Apple Store or the Google Store, and this is for in-person and virtual attendees. You can use this app. You can use the app to build your own schedule, look at the sessions and add them to your schedule. You can look at the speakers. You can connect with any attendee in person or virtual and chat and network. You can network with our Encompass exhibitor and connect with Marcia. So it's a really useful tool for networking and chatting with each other, checking out the sessions, looking at speaker information, session descriptions. So you can go to the App Store, look for USET. It will be USET SPF events. And then you'll search for best practices and up you go. So if you have any questions, please reach out to any staff person because they should be very familiar with the app, y'all. We have another virtual winner. Is that what you're saying? Oh, Erica LeGros, virtual attendee. You also won an awesome raffle prize that I'm very jealous of. So just want to encourage you to use the app and connect with us and then give us feedback. We'd love to know what you think about it because we want to use this for all of our future events. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the conference today.